Hey guys, John here. So, as it's no secret, I'm a big fan of the Arturia stuff. I love their synthesizers, especially obviously Pigments, right? But the V Collection is really cool as well. There's so many different choices to pick from, and that's partly the topic of this video. So, if you've ever gotten the V Collection or you're looking to get it, there's a lot of stuff that comes with it, and a lot of the stuff is really cool. But there comes a point where you look at all these synthesizers and you think, oh my God, which one do I even start with? Which one do I want to go to? And I guess a certain way to think about that is each one has their own thing to it, their own sound, their own vibe to it. And for example, I really like the Jupiter 8 V. That's a synthesizer that I probably should feature more on the channel, as I'm a big fan of it. And I generally am a big fan of it because if I'm ever doing something kind of retro-y or synthwavy, it's either going to be this one or the Juno. I think a little bit more so this one, there's a little more options, and I think it sounds slightly better to me personally. It's a very personal choice, but anyway, so this one is really cool, and I kind of want to show you some things to really get that kind of sound that you're going for if you're going for like a synthwave, retrowave kind of things like that. So you can do these type of sounds. They're pretty basic, they're pretty simplistic to make, right? It's not too difficult. But what really brings that small little percentage to, I guess, a little bit further to make it sound more authentic is going to be the synth that you pick, I think. Because we can do most of these sounds in really any synthesizer, and we can get very, very close. But some of the synthesizers have their certain characteristics that really give it that sound, right? That's the reason some of these are modeled from the past, right? They have their thing to them. So for example, let's do a new preset and let's take a listen to what we get out of the box. So a beautiful saw wave with another saw wave, slightly detuned and at the same octave. And we know that because we can look at the screen, everything's on pretty much one page. Yes, we can go into the advanced and do some more fun stuff, which we're going to get to. But for the most part, everything's kind of laid out in front of you, and it's pretty straightforward, right? VCO1, VCO2. This one, we can see that this is going to be on a saw wave as well as this guy. There's a little bit of fine tuning if we hover our mouse over here, and they're going to be on the same octave. So what we could do if we want to make some basic synthwave sound, right? We have these two saw waves, which just sounds pretty good right off the bat. But let's drop VCO2 down one octave. We have something like that, right? Okay, so we can add a little bit of a release to the amplifier by reaching to envelope 2 release. Okay, that's pretty cool. So now if we play a couple notes and let's do a little filter sweep here and see how that sounds. It's very smooth. Like nothing of that is really harsh to me. It's just very smooth. My ears don't, you know, those times where you hear a loud sound or something kind of pokes out in the frequency spectrum and you kind of flinch a little bit. Like this does not happen at all for this, which is really nice. So if you added even a little bit of resonance and do the same thing. It's still very smooth, but we get that nice characteristic of that resonance. Plus we have a high pass here, which is really nice as well. But anyway, so we have something kind of like this. Now let's say we bring down our cutoff. Right, and we want to do a little bit of modulation. So what we can do is, let's say, for example, we want to use envelope 1. So we look over here to the mod, and then we can say, let me just increase this here. Because we're going to be on envelope 1. Now we need to change this envelope just a little bit, right? So envelope 1, let's drop down our sustain. We really don't need sustain for this. And let's bring up the decay. Now when we let go, we kind of hear that bounce back. So let's increase this release just a little bit. So it has a little room to breathe. So right off the bat here, bring up our volume just a bit here. We're pretty much, I guess, a lot of the way already there of this type of sound. Maybe a little bit more resonance might be nice. Okay, so we have something like this, and the next thing I'd probably reach for is going to be some chorus, right? So we go to our advanced tab, and then down here on our effects, we go to the first one, and let's find our chorus. Sounds pretty cool, but a little bit much, I would say, though. All right, right, so we're making some progress, and maybe the next thing I would want to add here would be a little bit of delay, so we have that as well. Let's click our second effect, and let's select a delay here, and we do want to sync this, right? Because when it comes off here, it's going to be in milliseconds, so let's click sync, and maybe 1/4 might be okay for now. Okay, we do need to change this frequency here, the low pass and then the high pass a little bit, and then bring down the dry wet a little bit. Give me a little less feedback. So we're pretty close. Maybe that's a little too much resonance, so let's bring this down just a bit here. And that's already a pretty cool patch. Like, you could absolutely use this as is at this point, but we can do a little bit more refining, and there's a couple things I do want to show you. So we can always add a reverb here on the third effect, which does sound really nice. Now, I tend to use external reverb on synthesizers if I can. I mean, if it's in a pack or something like that, then absolutely we can use it inside the synthesizer and, let the person decide if they want to use the reverb inside the synth or use an external one. It's totally up to you. But however, if I'm going to be doing something like this, I would probably turn this guy off, or, maybe even just use something else. So maybe use a phaser if I wanted to, something like that. It really depends on what you're doing. But for now, let's select none. Let's close this advanced. And for this patch, we have Valhalla Vintage Verb, and on this algorithm here, we're going to be using the Chamber 1979, which I've fallen in love with since it came out and since I started using it. It's a really nice one. But for example, let's go to our Jupiter and add a little bit of that send here. And really, I mean, maybe it's a little bit much reverb. Let's bring that down a bit here. But really, wherever you want to put the cutoff is kind of a nice spot too as well. It just has that sound that I'm going for. Okay, so let's bring down our reverb just a bit here. And there's another couple things I wanted to show you here. So then here in the dispersion, it's kind of nice here. So by default, it's going to be coming on 1. We can go 2. And this kind of just, it sets, as you see down here, the dispersion mode. It's kind of like, if we click this custom here, we can see that there's different things like the pitch, the pulse width, the envelopes, cutoff, resonance. And it's kind of hard to see here, but if this is going to be the modulation, there's that small MOD here at the top. But anyway, so what we're kind of looking at here is we can have little variances, right? If a synth comes brand new out of the factory, or if you've had it for 10 years and, it's kind of, I guess, changes over time with hardware, right? So for example, we can go to 1, which is really nice. Accurate, pristine. Sometimes I go with 2 or 3, depending on what I kind of want to go for. And you can see these little screws here, these little pots change. So 3 is definitely pretty cool. 2 is kind of that middle ground, right? So it's either brand new or really aged. So that's kind of one little, I guess, hidden weapon under these things here. But anyway, another thing I kind of wanted to share as well is going to be the ARP, because this ARP, it's basic in the sense that it does what you want to do, right? It arpeggiates notes, but it does so in just a nice way with the filter and the resonance. It just sounds really, really good. So for example, we have our arpeggio section down here, and if we turn this on like this here, and if we played a chord, we have something like that. We can go up octaves. Right, do some crazy stuff like that. So, and we have different orders here. So we have up, down, order, so on and so forth, right? But a cool one here is going to be this exclusive. Right, so if we played a chord, something kind of like this here, it's going to go up the notes and then down the notes, right? Obviously, right? So, and this is kind of a perfect spot where I kind of wanted to demonstrate this ARP and how nice it sounds with the filter and the resonance. just has that almost that right knocking sound of an ARP, right? It's kind of hard to put into words exactly what I mean, but and really dialing in the decays for both the envelope and for the amplifier, you can really get some cool stuff out of that. One thing I really like doing, especially on a lot of sequences or kind of just catchy stuff, right? So I'll have a kick drum and then I'll do an ARP, which is going to be on 2 octaves. And then you really just have to play a nice note on the low end. And you can almost get a little bit acidy depending on where you put the resonance. So let's check it out with this drums here. So let's loop this bad boy real quick here. But yeah, it's definitely a lot of fun. And even if we take the ARP off, one last little thing that we can show you here. So we turn our turn our ARP off. Get a little bit more release here. Sure y'all know that one, right? Change our cutoff here a little bit. But yeah, long story short, this synthesizer can really get you anywhere you want to as far as the retro stuff. And the other ones can do the same thing as well. This one just has a certain characteristic that I really like. Another one that's a good contender of this guy is the CS80. That's, I mean, dude, it's hard to get a bad sounding patch out of that guy. Oh yeah, also we have a different filter, so if you don't want to do negative 24 dB, you can do 12. But yeah, if you do have the synthesizer and you haven't really used it for a while, dust it off a little bit, spend some time with it, get a little bit more familiar if you aren't with it, and it's a lot of fun to play around with. You have all the stuff here on the front that you would like to use, and then obviously you have the stuff in the advanced page with modulation stuff. You can do a sequencer, like it's pretty crazy, it's pretty in depth. You can do different modulation here and effects to your heart's content, I suppose. But yeah, spend some time with this one. If you're ever doing retro-y stuff, synthy stuff, try it out with this guy, and you'll probably be happy with the results that you get. So, yeah, thank you for hanging out with me for a little bit while we kind of geek out about this synthesizer, because it is a really fun one to play around with. And yeah, thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.